You tell me.
Yay, being sent to a third party. Got it.
All right. And I'm gonna go on Facebook too. I'll let you.
So m- I'm going to do the introduction while Delphine, who is more technically skilled than I am, does all of the rest of the work. So in other words, I'm going to flap my jaw while she does the real work. So, but my name is Neil, and I am a life coach working with parents, trying to help them live more meaningful lives with their children. I am the father of 8 children whom I love very, very much. And today we are going to be talking about relationships. And don't think that I have done a bad job of introducing Delphine. I'm going to let her introduce herself um, once she is all set up, and there is no rush whatsoever.
And just, I hope the video is public because I just have a little message telling me the video is private. So just let us know, people, if you see it. And I'm going to be right with you.
So, when I think of relationships or when I think of personal development, I think of setting goals in terms of money and job promotions and all of these things that are really visible. And one of the reasons that I think people focus on that is because that it is so visible. It's so easy to see. But one of the things that I have learned to focus on in my own personal development is relationships. How am I doing with my kids? How am I doing with my coworkers? How am I doing with money? My relationship with money. And so to me, I think it's really important that relationships have a place in your personal development goals. And if you don't have relationship goals, you're really missing out on the possibility of manifesting some really amazing, amazing experiences. Um, I've manifested friendships and partnerships and jobs. Um, and some of those have money associated with them, but very few of them actually do. So, uh, Delphine, what? First of all, introduce yourself, and then tell us your experience.
Sorry for the delay. I think we're live now. And thank you for introducing the subject. And it's really true. So first, like you said, I'm Delphine. I'm a coach. I'm a singer. I'm an English teacher. And like Neil, I'm passionate about personal development and spirituality. So now about the subject topic of today. It's true what you said. We always think of manifestation in terms of money, career. Those are the main goals generally,
And parking spaces.
and parking space. I came across that again this week in true, but it's true. You become a master manifestor in terms of parking spaces when you start this work. That's how you start. And then you realize you can also manifest relationships. And I guess it's one of the first things you actually do, and really unconsciously. It's the first unconscious thing you do. And while relationships make you conscious, actually, that's really tricky. That's how you become aware more and more. And so well, of course, one of the first experiences in terms of manifestation in relationships has been with you because we manifested this because but we both wanted it. So I guess now that we can look at it and connect the dots. Previously, we couldn't do it. Now we can see it. And how would you say we manifested that? before I tell you how I feel. How do you think we did it? What's the secret?
Well, for me, I had decided that, I had decided several years before we met that while I really enjoy my wife, she's a wonderful person. She has many great aspects that I truly enjoy. Um, One of the things that I did not feel I really had with her was a deep connection to personal development. She's just got a different attitude towards her own growth and how it's done, whereas I want to read somebody else's experience and learn from somebody else's knowledge base and gather a lot. And then I want to talk about it.
Sure.
And so at least a year, I'd say at least 2 years before you and I met, I had decided I want a friend that I can talk to some about personal development. And then I was introduced to Peggy McCall's Power Life script. And in there, I actually wrote down, I have somebody that I can talk to about personal development who encourages me, that I encourage, and we're learning from each other, and we're practicing together this art of manifestation. And Peggy McCall is associated with Bob Proctor, and Bob Proctor is how we met.
Exactly. And you talked about the decision you made, and this makes me feel like what you just explained, just like I for years now, yes, I wanted to manifest someone with whom I could work on my Turkish, for example. This was a goal. I wanted someone to learn Turkish with, and I manifested two people, and one recently. And as you said, it's the decision first. And but while the decision is made, but sometimes it doesn't, well, it takes time. And disappointment also, because like you previously in different episodes, you've already mentioned the fact that you've tried finding an accountability partner many times. It didn't
Yep.
work with everyone, and you had to look again, over and over again to find someone. I had the same experience with, for example, my Turkish accountability partner.
Mhm.
Um, and well, I guess it's like persistence too.
Yes.
That and yes,
See, for me, because I also work in the agricultural field, and there's a lot of trial and error. You plant 50 different varieties of a crop, and the first time through, 30 of them, maybe 20 of them survive. And then the next time through, you plant only those 20, and 10, 5, 8 survive. And then the next time you plant only those that survive. And you come down and you boil it down and you distill it down to just one or two. And but if you don't put it out there, and that's what I feel like we're doing is we're learning through contrast. Hey, while it's great that one of my experiences was, while it's great that you want to talk about personal development, all you ever want to do is complain about why it's not working. Um, okay, I can handle that for a few weeks, but by the time we get to a few months, suddenly I'm beginning to get busy during that time because it's such a downer. And so, even though, yes, I started out with multiple partners that eventually they removed themselves or I removed myself. One of my partners, I she was telling me how frustrating her life was, and I said, "Thank you, God. How can it get any better than this?" Which is a concept we were learning together, and it's quoted often in Access Consciousness and Louise Hay, and she hung up on me and never talked to me again. And I
Uh,
was like,
what happened?
that's that's kind of interesting. Thank you, God. How can it get any better than this?
Yes, but it's like a ping pong game, and
Yeah,
it's adjusting. And you can absolutely observe that in friendships too, I think, or in love and relationships. Because what's happening, you're adjusting frequencies, I may say. And thanks to that, we learned that manifestation also works within friendships and those area. And it's actually a good playground because if it works here, then you say, okay, so I'm gonna make it work in the financial area and in the health area. And so it's like learning. And from what I've seen, I think it's a game. Sometimes you enter relationships, you have that ping pong and you learn, and but you have to be willing to observe what is this learning, what is this teaching me, and then you have to adjust. And I think there is almost always a time where relationships go away and there's kind of a void, and you have to accept it because the universe is making space for the new to be able to come. And we may not always look at it like this. We may look at it as being punished or what's happening, what have I done? And
yeah.
actually, you realize a few months later, someone else is joining the game. And you say, oh my gosh, thank you. And I have been waiting for that so long. And but it takes time.
See, I think the worst thing that we do is we use it as confirmation. See, I'm always supposed to be alone. Everybody leaves me. I don't deserve healthy, positive friendships or relationships. Oh, I am just so broken. Oh,
But you see, another point is sometimes you keep and entertain some relationships because you have that fear of being alone. And you
oh,
may not
yeah,
realize. And actually staying in those relationships keeps the person you want to attract away because as long as you're attracting and entertaining that energy, it's blocking the other one.
yeah.
And so sometimes it's also be to you have to be willing to be really aligned and say, okay, I think this is not working anymore. I'm really not fulfilling that relationship anymore. I don't think, there's always an exchange of energy. And I think what you're saying, sometimes you get not bored, or I don't know, because of some accountability partners that had different expectations in that accountability partner
Mhm.
concept. And so you had to say goodbye to be able to welcome the other person.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, it was scary. It was scary because for months I would meet with people, I would talk with people, and I began to feel like something was wrong with me. And it's really hard to entertain the possibility that there's something wrong with me. And and so one of the things that somebody did for me that really helped, and now I do it for a lot of people that I interact with, is there are 8 billion people on this planet. There are, that means there are however many people besides myself who have the possibility of getting along with me, of having a similar set of interests. I mean, and just look at it. I had to go clear to France to find somebody that I could harmonize with.
Yes, imagine that. Yes, and we don't, yes, we don't even think about this, and that's actually also part of the plan, because sometimes we think that things have to be that way or this way. The person
Oh,
has
yeah.
to be like this, think like that, have, or even that religion, or has to be that at that level, that type of job or financial success. I don't know, expectations, while it doesn't play a role.
And if you let go of the expectations and you allow, if you just allow, all of a sudden magic happens.
And about that, I have a wonderful story to tell you, and it happened today. And actually, a few years ago, when I started reading about personal development and things like that, and also talking about reincarnation, things like that, I said, "Oh, I would like to have a conversation with a childhood friend who seemed to be open at the time, but I wasn't really open about the subject at the time." And I say, "Oh, today would be a good day to talk about this, reconnect." And I was like, "Okay, I would like to manifest that relationship again, that childhood friendship, and even my teenage years. That person was in kindergarten with me, so way back."
Mhm.
And so I said, okay. And this started like 5 years ago. And 1 or 2 years ago, I kind of abandoned the idea. I said, okay, it's not going to happen. And I just let it go. Guess what? Uh, Last week, I received a message from my mom, and she told me, hey, that person is back in town and she wants to talk to you. I gave her your number. And boom, we saw each other this afternoon. And you see, the frequencies totally aligned. And I mean, we have the same interest and totally aligned. There is no other word. And so
Wow.
it took 5 years, and I had abandoned the idea of seeing her again. And boom, yeah.
See, and the way I would describe that is it took 5 years for you to release all of the layers, all of the cocoons, all of the blocks that you had piled in front of that relationship.
I guess. I guess. So just being prepared and
Yeah.
be ready. And actually it's, of course it's the perfect timing, but my subconscious mind wasn't ready to accept that. And so I said, this is the perfect time. And we had that episode foreseen and last week, yes, let's talk about relationships. Okay, that's perfect.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
So when you talk about relationships, um, the the idea came up last week, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. But it's so true. We have relationships with food. We have relationships with our parents. And the joke that I told you last week was, if I die tomorrow, you will still be a vegan.
Yes, and that dog, yeah, on point.
And so there are some relationships that we're not going to give up. And there are some relationships that, as much as we enjoy them, you can't count on them.
Nope.
And so enjoy them while they're here, and but be willing to let go of them when the time is right.
Yes. Kind of a que sera, sera attitude in terms of relationships. But it's
Yeah.
particularly true also in um, when you talk about families. I guess family is one of the most complicated playground.
Oh
And
yeah.
sometimes, you can improve relationships, but sometimes you have to accept that it's better to love them from afar and say, okay, I wish you the best and focus on yourself. And if the frequencies align again, you can come back. But sometimes you need that separation. Sometimes there is nothing you can do except for just retreating. What do you think
Yeah.
about?
Well, so I when I first started coaching, um, I needed, of course, people to practice with. And so I reached out to all of my friends and family and I said, hey, I've started up coaching. Anybody who wants a free session or a group of sessions, please let me know. And I mean, I've got 7 siblings. I've got aunts and uncles, Canada, all over the US. Um, and almost no one responded. Only 1 or 2 people responded at first, and then another couple of people responded. And I was totally mystified by all of that. But out of those experiences, my relationship with certain members of my family has, on one hand, grown exponentially. And I've come to realize that not only are they my brothers and sisters, they're also my friends. They're also a support network in my personal growth. And others of my siblings, they're still my siblings and I still love them, but they're not interested in that area. And so I just it became this really eye-opening experience that everybody's at different places. And sometimes your family can be your friends. Sometimes people in your religious group can be your friends. But most of the time, those are not the places you're going to find your friends.
And that's when you learn about the concept of soul family and earth family, I would say. And
Yes.
sometimes they can be part of both families, but most of the time, no, I would say. And this is when magic happens when you connect with people from outside. I mean, on the other side of the ocean or that are so far away, and you just okay, you click, and
Yeah.
it happens just like that. And
Yep.
and I guess when you work on manifesting people, this is really what you're gonna attract. But I guess you have to be it's I've heard a theory that you come here like there is a tribe of souls. I guess you have the same frequency, and your the fate will reunite you
Mm.
with those people, but you have to be aligned to that frequency. As long as you haven't done the work, it might not be possible. So
And that makes so much sense. The idea that our soul is stuffed into this tiny little skin suit, it, to me, is absolutely impossible. And so for me, I mean, what is the famous saying that Bob Proctor says? 95% of what we do is habitual. Habits are just things that we do without thinking. And if 95% of what we do is done without thinking, then that's 95% of the time that we're going through our day. And we really don't need our spirit inhabiting our body to just keep us walking around and digesting food. So this thing that gives us energy, that gives us a connection with other souls, it is my belief that for the time that we're walking around unthinking, it's off doing something else, preparing activities for tomorrow, preparing experiences tomorrow, preparing relationships for tomorrow. And so if we actually get involved with it, then we can have that spiritual power running ahead and meeting with people, because space and time is something that's really confined to this earth, this 3D reality. My soul probably had been talking to your soul for years or months before we finally met up.
Yeah, and I've heard about this, and apparently I heard someone say that during our dreams, apparently our souls get out, and at night we're preparing plans. So before we meet and before we met, I guess, yeah, our souls were being, okay, you're gonna be here in Alsace, here's gonna be here in Idaho, you're gonna do that time. So okay, and you don't remember anything when you wake up, but it has been planned. Just as it has been planned that you're gonna be born, among that family with that mom, that sibling, and and yeah, you wanted it too. But
Okay, so yeah, get ready. So when I was growing up, my father was really, really critical and judgmental. And I was very much a people pleaser, and so I worked with I it worked out well. But when I started to enter into personal development, I found within myself a lot of blocks, a lot of tension, a lot of anger spots. And so one of the activities that I did was kind of hypnosis. And I actually got to talk to my dad, who at that time had passed on. And first of all, he apologized to me. He said, I never did want to give you this burden, because I had identified it as a burden. It was something that sat right here on my shoulders, and I had to carry that thing around. And he said, first of all, I want you to know I didn't want to give it to you, but you asked for it. And that is so true, what you said. We came to the family that we came to, the relationships that we have there, we planned that out. And the other thing that I learned is that now that he's dead, he's a heck of a lot more fun. He's much more easy to work with. He's much more open-minded, and he's much less critical than he was when he was stuck in his Earth suit.
and this reminds me so much of the movie, because sometimes it can be easier to understand when you might watch a movie or a Pixar movie. It was, I think, Soul. Do you know Soul, the movie from Disney?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Well, you should. And it's about all that process of reincarnation. And you see the little souls getting ready to jump down to Earth. And they come in with a different set of personality traits, but there's one that it's missing. And they have to find their soul's purpose when they come down on Earth, what makes them vibrate and things like that. And it's, yeah, really interesting. And for kids, it's really interesting too. And then there is that one musician that dies when he didn't want to die, and then he wants to come back to Earth, and you see his story. And because And he thought that his dream was really to be a famous musician, to live off of his music. And when then he realizes, but because he becomes the guide of another soul, that it's not, life is not about, that success, it's about enjoying the process, actually. And yeah, that made me think of, yeah, the reincarnation thing that you said, and that, yeah, those two
Ah,
worlds coexisting. Yes. So not, yeah.
I really like that. That's yeah. I think I think we're actually a lot more responsible for what we experience here than we realize.
And if we knew everything, maybe it would be less fun.
Well, see, and I think that once we realize how it works, it becomes much more exciting. Because as a people pleaser, I believed very much that the outside tells me whether I'm good enough, it tells me what to do, it tells me everything. Um, I'm having a lot more fun since I realized, you know what? It comes from inside. And the inside is where more satisfaction comes from. It's where the journey becomes valuable.
Exactly. When you understand everything is a mirror to you, and each
Yep.
relationship is pointing something so that you can evolve and learn from it, that's a game changer.
Yeah. And this last week, I had a friend tell me an experience that really changed how I look at things because I was getting frustrated with some situations at work. And she said, Neil, you need to do a list of positive aspects. I said, what the heck is that? And she said, oh, it's great. It's the most amazing thing in the world. It's so you've got a list of things that you want in a partner, that you want in a job, that you want in this, in that. And so what you're doing in this list of positive aspects is you're writing down, this is what the universe got right with this person, with this job, with this situation. And so it's simultaneously gratitude, saying, I am grateful that this person gave me a bonus at X, Y, and Z time. It was a perfect amount. It was a manifestation of something else that I wanted. And it gave me freedom to do this and that and the other. And so you write this down. And oh, yeah, you know what? This person hired me on at just the right time. And this person did this. And I then realized I don't just have a relationship with my manager. I have a relationship with my company, with my job, the job that I'm supposed to be doing. And then I have a relationship with my coworkers. And then I have a relationship with the environment. And it was like, oh my goodness. And I can write a list of positive aspects on all of these things.
And I think what you're saying is, it's like we said, people think they want to get rich, but they just want to be happy. And when you do that gratitude thing, you're connected to the good feeling of those people, environment, and yeah, everything is about the feeling. And this brings me back to, because I guess most of the people, when they want to manifest relationships, it's also about love. How can we manifest the love of our lives, of our life?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Bob Proctor talks about it a lot, and I followed kind of what he said and what one of his coaches, well, the one I work with said, and he says that you have to really visualize that person, but really visualize with exactly the traits of personality that you want in him. Like, I don't know, that he really understands you, like you have same interests, like you put personal development, and I don't know if he speaks that language or that language, or that he likes to go lay on the beach and not a mountain person. I don't know, everything you want, you just write it down. And actually, that's what also Kevin did. I work with Kevin and Natalie Bouchard, and
Mhm.
I remember when he was coaching me, Kevin, he showed me how he had manifested his wife, and yeah, and I did the same thing. And then he said, you have to really be in that energy, not, you don't have to have, you cannot wish for a person to be that person. You have to visualize the energy, the feeling. How would it feel to be with that person? And
Yep.
well, so I did that. Well, it worked. But before that happened, it's that phase is so interesting. It's I was getting the relationships were not fulfilling, but it taught me every time I learned something new. And but it's also seemed that it's really kind of negative or really emotionally triggering before you get to that person or the one you're supposed to be with at that time, because when you change frequency, sometimes that's why some marriages end and you meet new people. And but it seems that just like in friendships, sometimes relationships end so that new friends can come in. And I think it's the
Yep.
exact same process when it comes to love. You're gonna date, it's gonna be and they're really bad, that you're gonna learn. And really uh before you meet, yeah. So it's the contrast. But then you see, oh, I had that, and
Yep.
when you meet that, wow, you have that big, it's like a surprise in a way. Boom.
Yeah. Well, it's the idea that there's nothing but positive or contrast. You only get what you want, or you get something to contrast to teach you what you actually want. And you are correct. You should never visualize somebody else. You should never manipulate
Exactly.
someone else. And here's the thing, don't manipulate money. Don't try and fool it, because it won't be fooled. Don't try and manipulate your job. You can only ever be honest, because you have to be honest with yourself. And if you're only manipulating yourself and others, you're lying to yourself.
And you'll meet people who will lie to you. And
Bingo.
yes, and this is in terms, and this is, I noticed how the friendship cycle evolves. And the more true I am to myself, I want those people that are now my friends to be as true as I am. And so sometimes you say, oh, that's not a true relation. It's not based, it can be a good relationship. You can have fun, but at some point you're not here only to have fun. You're here to evolve, to grow, and you cannot do that with everyone.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I think I've been through probably at least 15 different marriages with my wife.
Oh, see.
I mean, because there's the marriage that I had to her before we had children. And then we changed, and we both had to decide, are we going to stay married to each other? Because when she was expecting, she was a different person. And when she and I was in undergraduate school. But then 2 children later, she was expecting again, but I was in graduate school. I'm a different person. She's a different person. She's a different person now that she's got 2 children versus never having children before. She's a different person when she had 5 children versus no children before. I'm a different person when I've got a job versus a graduate program versus this job versus that job versus living in this town with these people. I'm different.
And I guess this is the secret too, because you have to be willing to accept that you're going to grow. And this is what makes the relationship work. Is that I'm not going to be the same. You're not going to be the same, but we are consistent. And I often hear that's also the difference between, I mean, earthly love or divine love or sacred love is that there is something bigger than the humans we are. We are loyal. I mean, and love transforms and grows. And it's really accepting that, okay, it's gonna be different. And it's for me, it's complicated because I'm like, I used to be really controlling and I feel secure when I control everything, which is not the case in relationships, and be it in love or in friendships. In you cannot control, you know? The only person
Yeah.
you can control is yourself.
Yep.
And
And so I was reading this book this last week called Controlling People. And people who try to control are some of the most frightened people. They're scared because they believe that only out there can they find peace. And so they're trying to control out there. They're trying to control their spouse, their children, their co-workers. They're trying to control the outside because they feel out of control
from the
with themselves.
exactly. But the time you realize that takes it takes years sometimes.
It can, unless you're willing to ask that question, unless you're willing to look at, and my poor wife, I have pointed at her and said, you don't support me. You don't listen to me. You don't understand me. And 9 times out of 10, I've looked at it and said, huh, I'm not supporting her. I'm not listening to her. And so I'm accusing her of exactly what I feel like I'm doing wrong. She really is. She is my mirror.
Mm-hmm. But when you become aware, that's when you can actually learn from it. And
Yep.
it made me think of something Bob said about the inside out thing. Well, it will come
Mhm.
back. I can, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's I think that's what's happened so many times because I've had people that I was friends with say, okay, I'm done. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I'm like, really? Because I'm not done with you. If you're done with me, that's fine. But they were trying to tell me, oh, you must be so bored listening to me. And I'm like, no, actually, I find you incredibly interesting. Oh, well, I must just be so annoying to you. No. And so finally I stopped myself and realized, why are you looking for an excuse to get rid of me? And 9 times out of 10, or very often it was because I use 9 times out of 10 too frequently. I use 9 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10. Uh, but too often it was because they were feeling unworthy. They were feeling like, oh, I feel boring. So he must think I'm boring. I'm
Oh.
like, no, I don't. All you had to do was ask.
And sometimes we're just too afraid of sharing what we feel, what we think, because we've never learned that. And I guess it's also a generational thing. and
Oh
that
yeah.
our parents didn't learn that you have to express your emotions, that it's okay to cry, to feel anger, to let it out. And and yes, if we could only just talk what we have on our hearts, you know, having an open heart will just do miracles. And I guess this is when you'll have the most fulfilling relationships, is when you talk with your heart, and when the other
Yeah.
person has her or his heart open, she can she can just listen, but listen to you. There is no other way, and that's when the connection can happen. But if someone has his or her heart closed, that's when you hit a wall. And often what happens
Yep.
is people that get annoyed when you open your heart, well, they will vanish. Exactly, because it's too strong. You cannot, and that's why when you work on yourself and you become, sometimes you're well, you say what you feel, what you think, and people can see that as really harsh or violent, or I don't know, because it can be brutal, like the brutal truth. Well, you can learn to say, but for example, when I say things, I don't know how to sugarcoat things. I'm not a sugarcoater. And some people like, oh my gosh, you're so, yeah, and they just cannot stand it. And then also some people just, they cannot be in your energy anymore. And you, in, yeah, there are places you cannot go anymore.
Well, and it's like anything else. When your vibration changes, you can't stay in the same key as you just left. You and you know, one time I heard a quote, um, just because I'm being honest doesn't mean you get to call it abuse. Now, don't get me wrong, there is abuse. There are people who uh, criticize and complain and tell you you're doing stuff wrong. Those are the people you want to avoid. But somebody who points out a blind spot and says, you know, Neil, you were really hard on that person. You were unnecessarily hard on that person. Those are the people that you not only don't want to avoid, those are the people you want to surround yourself with, because those are the people who will honestly mirror back and say, you're doing well, or you hit a really sour note and it did not go over well,
Exactly.
and you need to improve. Generally, the people who are that way will express that they believe you can improve.
They will let you know how to feel good about it and not take it the wrong way, because generally we it's the ego part where we get offended and hurt, and sometimes it hurts, and but that's the way it is. But you
Yep.
can learn from it, and I guess once you start that work on yourself, you're more and more willing to hear, oh, I did something wrong, and you're ready to listen to the other party and say, oh, I was not aware that my words could hit so harshly and cause you that much pain, and you just, oh, better roll my tongue several times before I talk. And I again, now I have what I wanted to say before. I don't know if it's
Oh,
related to that subject. It's about, you said people that want to control are frightened. And it's true that Bob Proctor opposes fear to faith. And it's exactly the same thing. The fear is that you have a belief that everything will go south, and and when you have faith, you say, okay, but it's only the best that's happening, and you have faith, it's going to be okay. And it starts with having faith in yourself and feeling that it's going to be okay. But this is a long job for me. It's a long journey, but
oh yeah.
and I guess when you choose the side of faith in everything you do, well, that's when it becomes magical, you know. But you have to experience fear to say, oh, there's something wrong here. And so you can switch to the other side.
Yeah. You have to experience the contrast.
The contrast.
You
Contrast.
know, My son was making eggs yesterday morning, and he was crying. He was crying out of frustration. He was crying out of I'm a failure. And so I walked over to him. He was trying to flip an egg and get it perfectly, fried on both sides. And I looked at him and said, "Hmm, you screwed up." And he melted. He started bawling. And I said, "Now wait a minute. Do you realize that there's a relationship there? That I said you screwed up, not that you are a screw up." And he said, "Yeah, but I feel like I'm a screw up." And I said, "Well, but you're not. You're making a mistake, but you are not a mistake. You are doing something wrong, but you are not wrong." And so I helped. I wanted to make sure that he understood that there's a separation there. And because he made a mistake, because he screwed up, he simply had scrambled eggs. You
Mm.
know, but he was so frustrated because he felt like it had to be done perfectly. He felt like if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure.
And I guess when you come here, I mean, you want to do everything perfectly, but we are not perfect. And in relationships, where that's where it becomes obvious we're not perfect. And it's true that we often identify when we make mistakes that we are a mistake, when we fail, we're failure. And just personal experience, how many times have I taken part in a singing competition? And you always want to be perfect. And sometimes I had a microphone issue, then I couldn't remember the lyrics, and and you feel disappointed, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you just get overwhelmed. And how much have I cried, when things like that happen, because you always identify that part, oh, I'm a failure, when it's just no, and it was absolutely supposed to happen that way, even if it's hard to swallow
Yep.
sometimes. But yeah, we tend to do that. And
And it really, in my opinion, there's the old saying that Jesus said, the first rule of heaven is love God and with all your heart, might, mind, and soul. And the second one is like unto it, love your fellow, love your neighbor as yourself. And for a lot of years, I believed that that was a commandment. You're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. Now I realize that it's like the law of gravity. You can only ever love your neighbor, and you always will love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. And so that relationship with your neighbor is not nearly as important as that relationship with yourself, because that relationship with yourself determines how good your relationship with your neighbor is going to be.
mhm. And it all comes back to being able to open your heart, because
Yeah.
generally you cannot resist an open heart. So you either, well, open your heart, or you just go away generally, because it's you just can't, because sometimes it can be painful to open your heart, and it's suffering that opens your heart actually. And this is really,
Yep.
yeah, a hard pill to swallow again. You have to. And this week I came across a video telling, we always think, how did those masters become masters? All that love and light thing. And this is also in personal development, not always talked about. But you don't become a master by smiling all day long, having nothing happening in your life. Actually, it's how you master your pain, how you look at your pain, and how you sit with your pain. And this will help you being so, because it's like cleaning, you know, you take the negativity out by just being sitting with the negativity and the pain in, and you transmute the energy. Yeah.
That is so true. You can never clean your house just by shutting up all of the closets.
You have to be pragmatic. Yeah.
You first have to open the closets and get rid of stuff.
That's that work we don't want to do. But then you feel so much better when it's done, don't you?
Yeah. So you know what? I have a quote that I will share with us in 2 weeks, but I'd like to talk about authenticity and the importance of authenticity in relationships and how to get there.
Mhm.
What do you think about that subject?
I love it. I'm in.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
cool. Then we'll see our audience in 2 weeks.